Yeah, it's funny. You might be able to put like the subheader of this episode as I could be convinced, because you could convince me on every position in this division except for maybe 1 and 8. And number one, I do have Chad's Toronto Maple Leafs winning this division, and I think easily. I think that this team is even better than they were last year. When I look at the offense of this team, there's not much I need to say. Obviously, they have the stars on this team. If Matthews can have a bounce back year on what is still a great season last year, that's obviously going to help this team. Marner is still going to be gunning for that 100-point mark. Willie Nylander's looking for a contract, so he's going to be flying out there. Tavares is still going to have 40 goals all on the power play. So obviously they have the stardom here, but this team got even deeper when it comes to scoring. I think that all the guys they lost in the offseason, they've improved with who they brought in. They brought in Bertuzzi and Domi, who I think are both improvements on a Kerfoot and a Bunting. So I think this team's got the depth scoring and obviously the stardom. So goals isn't going to be the problem. And on the back end, I've really grown to love this top pair of Morgan Rielly and TJ Brody. I think TJ Brody is a better defensive defenseman than I have given credit in the past. I was kind of hard on him when he first came to Toronto, but I've really grown to like him. And then the depth of this team has gotten even stronger on defense. McCabe and the addition of Klingberg, who is an upgrade on Hull, obviously. And the pair of Giordano and Timothy Liljegren was one of the best at times last season. So defense, they've got it all. And then goaltending, Samsonov, he showed us that he is a true starting goalie last year. And then Woll stepped up when they really needed him, both in the backup role in the regular season as well as in the playoffs. So goaltending is not the question mark it was last year for me. I don't really have any questions about this team. They've got the grit now, so you can shut up all those grit-loving Leafs fans if it doesn't work this season. New GM, they have nothing to complain about. So let's see who's going to be the fall guy this year if they aren't good. But I think this team's going to win this division.
Yeah, someone's uncle, and many of our uncles actually are pumped that the Maple Leafs got some grit in their lineup, so they can stop harping on Kyle Dubas as the GM. They've got Brad Treliving, who loves grit, sandpaper, snot, piss, and vinegar, and that's his quote directly. So he'll tell you how it is, and he did. But yeah, Case, I also have the Maple Leafs at number one. Surprise, surprise. We picked them to finish first in this division last year. They got 111 points. Usually that would be enough to win a division, but the Boston Bruins had 135. So I don't think any of us are anticipating 135 points out of the Bruins this year again. So I think we can safely say that Toronto, it's their division to lose. For all the reasons you mentioned, I think this year they're probably going to score more, but they might get scored on a little bit more as well. And I dug into a few numbers on that topic because I truly believe that now that's how they're structured to play, which I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's just different. Last season, they were 8th in expected goals for and 9th in expected goals against in the entire league in all situations. This year, if I were to predict where they'll finish in both of those categories, I would say top 5 in expected goals for and maybe between 10th and 15th in expected goals against. So I think they got a little bit better offensively and a little bit worse defensively. But I think that at the end of the day, they probably shake out to finish in and around 110 points, and they had 111 last year. So that's my prediction. They're basically the same team. They're a little bit different on the periphery. I like how they added some guys who can play and bring a different element, like Bertuzzi and Domi. I like how this season they're going to be able to have some younger players on cheap contracts for the full season, hopefully, like Matthew Nyes, like Nick Robertson, who had a great preseason last year, and hopefully he has a similar preseason this year. But yeah, I think they're same, but different, and are poised to win this division. Harper, what do you think?
Well, great regular season team. I mean, you look at the last 5 years, and they've been one of the best regular season teams in the NHL through and through. So there's no question about that. Obviously, the questions are going to come up with this team when we get to the playoffs next year. But no, I mean, looking at these guys coming in, I like what Tree Living has done in his first off season, adding all those great terms that we've heard being tossed around this off season. You've got Bertuzzi in a contract year. Max Domi, I think he could come out like a house on fire. It obviously means a lot to him, clearly, to come to Toronto and be a Maple Leaf. And John Klingberg, that he's motivated to have a bounce back year after just a disastrous year last year, starting out with Anaheim and then going to Minnesota at the deadline and all the question marks around him. William Nylander, with him being in a contract year, like Case mentioned, and then all the other depth pieces that are already there that have been brought in by Kyle Dubas. But you knew that there needed to be a shakeup with this team. It started at the top, and I think that their general manager, that Brad Treliving, is extremely motivated for this team to be a success after what he went through in Calgary, and so I like what he's done. And you mentioned, a few guys that are coming in and they're on, some cheap contracts. Matthew Nyes, who really showed something in the playoffs. Joseph Woll, same thing. And just looking at this team future-wise a little bit, Easton Cowan, you might have something with him as well, who, Chad, you and I were talking a little bit about today and in our DMs, and is going to stick with the NHL roster for the time being. So, I mean, that's a little bit down the road probably, but there are some intriguing pieces there. And you mentioned Nick Robertson, and can he bounce back and stay healthy? But no, for the most part, this team is the same. They're excellent in the regular season. That's not going to change, and I have them at number one in this division.